Well, hello and welcome everyone to another Plan Tracker and Plan Tracker and Mable Facebook Live. A few many names there. Wherever you are joining us from around Australia, first and foremost, we hope that you are safe and supported during these uncertain times. Today's discussion is focusing on hiring support workers, and that's from the very beginning of the process of conceptualising and thinking about what our actual supports are, right through to interviewing and recruiting. It's such an important task that we have no matter where we are in our journey of receiving supports. Sometimes we'll be finding ourselves looking for that very first support worker, and in other times it's actually filling a new role in our team or replacing a person in our team. Today's discussion is really important, and we're so excited that you're here to share it with us. It's going to be full of practical advice to really help all of us on our support journey, I guess. So first and foremost, let's begin with introductions. So those who haven't met me, I'm Sarah. I'm Community Engagement Manager at Plan Tracker. I'll pass over to Pieta to say hello. And first of all, tell us, how are you today?
I'm very well, thanks, Sarah. So my name's Pieta. I am the State Manager for Mable in Victoria. So I'm here in Melbourne. And really, I think as Sarah said, just really making sure that my family and myself have got some good supports around us, looking to sort of make sure that we're all talking and thinking about how things are going to work for us over the next week, as we've got another week of lockdown. But, you know, I'm always looking forward to sharing in these great discussions. And I think this is one of the great things that we have in now that we've discovered Facebook Live and Zoom, is we can still connect. So so very excited, and pleased to be a part of today's discussion as part of Mable, but also as all of us are today, with that lived experience of being a family member of someone with a disability.
Yeah, thanks, Pieta. So that brings us to our special guest today. I want to give you a really warm welcome, Katherine. We're so pleased to have you here today. Katherine supports her family members. She is a mother and a sister to 2 NDIS participants. So that journey, or that role, I guess you'd say, over the past 10 years has brought a lot of recruitment experience for her. So first of all, Katherine, do you want to just perhaps expand on some of your experience before we jump into our 6 primary questions that we're going to focus on today?
Well, sure. So yes, hi everybody, and it's a pleasure to be here, and I hope you're all safe and well. So as Sarah mentioned, I have been involved in looking for and engaging paid supports in the life of my sister, particularly for over 10 years, because she had some funding through the state system before the NDIS came into being. And we were lucky, I guess, at that time, to have a good provider in our life who was very looking forward to, I guess, the things that were hopefully coming, and were prepared to allow us as a family to be very involved in crafting the kinds of supports that my sister was going to have. And they were very keen to allow us to have a lot of say in who are the workers that were going to support my sister, and what would they be doing, and what sort of rosters they'd be working. And so we were very hands-on right back then. And I guess for me, it was very much a learning curve though. So for any of you out there who are watching, who are just starting this journey, I remember the days well, and how you know, how nerve-wracking some of it was. But again, it's just like anything, the more you do it, the better you get at it. And I've been lucky really to have had a lot of other people who've been doing the same thing, you know, at the same time, and have been generous with their, you know, their tips and tricks and the do's and the don'ts, and who've shared that stuff with me. So I see this as now kind of my opportunity to share it with others, which is a really great opportunity.
And what you're describing there is the real depth and power of family leadership in Australia, isn't it? And I think all of us here today can attest to that. We all benefit from it, and we all want to pass that experience on.
Yes, exactly.
So I guess sometimes we find people sort of need this information about hiring support workers, but what they start with is an individual question, like where to find a support worker, or I've got this problem and it's not, I can't find the right person, or I can't find someone to turn up. And so I guess, first of all, is the first question to you, Katherine, is where to start? Where are we going to frame this whole conversation moving forward?
Okay, so I think that the best place to start is actually being really clear about what's the job. So before you go looking for the person, start with, well, who is the person? Is it you who is a person with a disability who's looking to engage someone to support you? Or as a family member, are you doing it on behalf of your son or daughter, or whoever it is? Mm-hmm. What is the support need that they have? What is it exactly that or what's the need that you're trying to fill? What's the support need that you're trying to fill? Mm-hmm. And then it's like, so if what we're trying to do is bring somebody into my son's life, for example, who's going to help him get out and about on the weekends or in the evening and have, be able to participate in the things that he likes to do, then what does that job look like? So what are going to be the components of the job? When might it start? What days is it going to be on? What are the hours? What type of person is going to be the right kind of person to actually fulfill that job well? So I think it's really important to do all that thinking first before you even get to the point of, well, now where do we look for this great person? So as much as that probably sounds like it's a fair bit of work, it is, but it will put you in a really much better place to actually identify then, if this is the job and these are the skill sets that we think we need, where might I look for the person who's got those skills? And then it also gives you a really good idea about then how might I interview for that job? What sort of questions should I ask?
That's right.
It's not,
it builds the information to answer so many other questions that you'll have. It
certainly does. And so, but it's just thinking about it is a really important thing to do. Like where to start, and start with what's the job.
What's the actual job. Yeah.
And we've talked about carer overwhelm previously, about sometimes in that role of, feeling responsible for therapy or, this, I think sometimes that's such good advice. Just start with one thing. Sometimes when you look at a whole plan and you think, I've got all this funding and I've got funding here and I've got funding there and it's sort of like, just start with one thing. And it's so right, Katherine. Just start with one thing your person would like to do. They would like to go and play basketball on a Thursday night with their peers that they know through their workplace. And just that one thing. And that gives you a really achievable thing to start with.
Okay, Katherine, so we've thought about it. We've got a whole host of ideas. We've got those details now. How do we actually move forward for that information? And would we getting it down on paper? Is that what our goal is next?
Yeah, well, that's certainly what I do. And I know that a lot of people do the same thing. And in fact, what we're doing is creating a job description, like a position description. Even though they sound like that's kind of a formal word, really all you're doing is putting your thoughts down on paper. So rather than you've just got to remember it, or you might, forget a bit, it's write it down. Because what you're trying to do also is, different people are good at different things. So you've identified, am I looking for somebody who's going to help my son or daughter get out and about? So you're looking for, somebody who's got that kind of skill set. Or are you looking for someone to come into the home because the person that you're supporting requires personal care or something like that? So, they're very different skills. And so it may well be that you're not looking just for one person. It may be that you're looking for two. And I would always suggest that, in fact, it's not a great idea to have all your eggs in one basket and only ever have one person that you are engaging. If at all possible, it's much better to always have two, simply because of the practical things. People get sick, people go on holidays, people leave. So being totally reliant on one person to do everything leaves you a little bit vulnerable. And
it does, and we've discussed that at length, actually, natural safeguards.
Yeah, exactly. So that's just another point. Like, have two if you can. Write a position description or just a job description so that you're just getting down on paper what's the main purpose of the role, and then you're identifying just in dot points. So what are the actual activities that person's going to do across the 3 hours or the 5 hours or whatever it is. And one of the reasons that or a couple of the reasons that it's good to have a position description is, firstly, it really gets you to focus on the role so that you are very clear about it. Because if you're a bit wishy-washy about it, you're not going to be able to sell it very well, and you're not going to be able to attract the right kind of person if you're just a little bit vague about it. But also, having a job description, it actually provides clarity for you and the person, because you will at some stage give someone who you're possibly going to be hiring the position description. So then, there can be no confusion about what it is that you're actually asking them to do. But it also can guide the orientation process or some sort of induction process that you might use for a new worker. And also it can help with performance challenges, because, sometimes you're going to have them. You've engaged somebody who just sounds fabulous, they look terrific at interview, and then they start the position, and then suddenly half the things that you're expecting them to do aren't being done. And so it actually gives you a point to come back to, say, well, actually, remember when we met and we looked at the position description and it said this, this, and this. Well, perhaps, there's a reason why that's not happening. Let's talk about it. So it just gives you something to come back to in case things start going a bit pear-shaped, because sometimes they will. Well,
that's why I think that our final question is what to do. What to do when it doesn't work out. So we're going to go back and touch on that. Have you had any experience, Peter, at writing position descriptions?
Yes, I have. And I was actually going to just say it's so good, Katherine, for you to sort of be really stepping this out, because this is work, and this is what I always think of. It's the double-edged sword of choice and control.
Yes,
we want more control. Yes, we really want more out of these supports. We want more control. We want this, but that actually needs, at the outside, it means more work. But I think it's really, we have to invest as much energy as we expect to come back. I think that's a really good point, Katherine, that a good job description, we love writing funky job descriptions. The job description that we're famous for is help an 18-year-old rocker chick discover Melbourne, and which always part of our job descriptions for my daughter is that you must like 80s glam rock, because that is what she loves. So you either have to like it or be prepared to put up with a lot of it in the car and a lot of music. I think that you're right, Katherine. I think it really helps you set the tone, but you're absolutely right. I think start doing this now, setting up this work, really the expectation from the other person as well. They can see that you put all this effort into it. On
that, I've had, over the years, I've had numerous people actually say to me, oh, wow, this is so great. No one's ever given me a position description before. But it's also, as you say, like, this is serious business. We're bringing somebody into someone's life, like a stranger, and that's who they are initially. There's the strangers we're introducing into our life, our family, our home, whatever it is. So this is not trivial. It's something that does need to be treated seriously.
Yeah, I think all of those, everything you've said, really, really, really important. Okay, so we're up to written a position description or some type of outline of how that looks. And then we get to the point of looking/advertising. So what do we do? Well, what do you do, Katherine, when you want to take it out there in the world and go and find these people or this person?
Okay, great. So I then use the position description as the basis for my advert, because I've identified the role, I know what the skill set is, and so then that gives me the words to use in an advert. And personally, what I do is I look outside the disability service system first. So the first thing I would do is talk to everyone I know and put the word out that I'm looking for somebody, because sometimes it's the somebody that you spoke to who knows somebody, who's going to be absolutely perfect for the job. They don't work in the sector. You're not going to find them, through the usual channels. So I think, I find that a really useful thing to do. So start outside the sector first. And again, depends on what it is what the job is. So it might be that if you're looking for, so Pieter, your example, somebody who needs to enjoy rock music, and to support your daughter, well, where is somebody in that age group who likes those things? Where are they? And so that's where you would advertise, because that's the kind of person you're trying to attract. So you have to just use your imagination a little bit, and it, you know, it does require a bit of legwork, but it pays off, because what I have found is that if you get this bit right, you're much more likely to attract the right person who's going to be the right match, and they stay longer. Some of the people that have been supporting my sister have been, you know, with her for 6 years. So that's a long time.
Yeah.
But it's because we got this right. You know, they have shared interest. We found them in the place where, you know, it made sense to find them, and it was just a really good match. And then if you've, you know, the word of mouth doesn't work, well, then you try all sorts of other things that you might generally do. Seek is a bit of a, you know, a waste of time, I have found personally, because you just get hundreds of people applying because they have to, you know, because they're just doing the job seeking thing. But sometimes, you know, you might luck out and find somebody who's perfect. But I've also used Gumtree and found some really great people on Gumtree, because it just very much depends on the role. So is there a particular skill set that the person needs to have? Do they need to have experience that comes from the sector?
Yes, that's important, isn't it? Because sometimes they will need to.
Supporting somebody with very high physical support needs who, you know, perhaps is at risk of choking. You need somebody who understands what that risk is, and who perhaps has that experience. So again, it very much comes down to who is the person, what's this role going to look like, and then you sort of chase the avenue that leads you on for the right person.
Yeah, that's the point there. You're absolutely right. So we've actually found, like, going to your local universities, particularly if you're looking for someone who's got a few more skills, you might be tapping into a paramedic student or a nursing student or a therapy student. Most of the universities will have job boards. You can tap into those. The TAFEs as well, for tapping into people who might be completing some qualification. And to your point, you're right, Katherine, it may not be that you're looking for someone that's completing a disability qualification. You might be looking for someone who's doing a hairdressing qualification, because you're looking for someone to teach, you know, self-care and grooming. So they're a really great place to tap into. I think for me, I agree. I think we're looking for people who aren't necessarily entrenched in the old ways of doing things. And one of the great things, just to sort of say to people, that if you do make these connections in the community, one of the great things I love about Mable is the fact that it is actually a platform that you can use to support that connection. So sometimes you'll engage with these people and they'll be super self-directed, and they may already have a small business that they're running. But if you do need that bit more support, using a platform like Mable, that, you know, the insurance is going to be in place and that the verifications are going to be done. So everybody you engage with, even if it is your next door neighbour's best friend's son, everybody should have working with children, working with, you know, police checks, those sort of things. So I think absolutely look in your community. Let's activate our communities, and then look for the support that you can get to then
how do you engage them?
Formalize that engagement.
Again, you make it such a good point, because that's what you referred to as the double-edged sword of choice and control. We do get that marvelous self-directed pathway, but it comes with these roles and responsibilities. So we find ourselves learning, don't we, about what safeguards and what things need to be in place, and those things that you talked about there about licenses and checks and insurances and all those types of things need to be considered as well.
In your ad, you can say, to apply for this role, you will have to show a current police check, a current driver's license with, with insurance on your car, blah, blah, blah. Don't be afraid to put all of that in an advertisement that you require.
And I just noticed,
I was just going to add, and in fact, what I explicitly say in the adverts that we use is that we're not looking for short-term one-off type people. We actually are seeking people who are looking for a long-term relationship and a long-term commitment. Because I think about, for my sister and my son who's younger than her, this could go on. I mean, this is their life. This is going to be for 30, 40 years. to have people come and go, come and go, come and go, the paid supports, you know, that ever evolving, you know, people coming and going is just can be really damaging to people. So we start from day one seeking people who are looking for something long term. And I put it in the ad.
Yeah.
So you're right.
Yeah.
You know, don't be afraid to be specific about what it is that you're looking for.
I just read from Facebook because Ricky's made a really helpful point from her experience. She said also when you have a complex schedule, I have multiple shifts every day, she says, it helps a lot to use a platform because I can see at a glance that I have filled all the shifts. So I guess that comes to that sort of, the different roles and the different types of things, but some of that is also the shifts, the actual practical of the timing in the day or the week. Yeah. Okay, so right, so you've gone looking, you've advertised, so you've found some possible candidates on the initial glance. Tell me, Katherine, about what you do to prepare for interviewing them.
Okie doke. So, well, I certainly vet, you know, people via their response to the advert, and I also, I actually expect people to apply for the job in writing, and I just think that's not asking too much of people, and in fact, it's actually worked really well in our favour because I find that the people that put the time in to actually respond to the ad and do what is asked of them, they nearly always are the ones that end up at interview. The people whose response is, I'm interested, right, they don't quite make the cut generally.
It's a generational thing, Katherine. It's a generational thing.
Possibly. But, you know, like if they're prepared to put in a little bit of effort there, I just,
get it.
you know, that's good. So I am very much cull at that point.
Okay.
I always try to have 2 or 3 people to interview because then you've got, you know, you've got a bit of a comparison thing. If you're interviewing one person, you can end up feeling a bit desperate if they're not right. So hopefully you've got your PD done really well, you've advertised well in the right place, and you've got a couple of people to interview. So then I would write my interview questions. So just think about what is it that you're asking of this person, and I want to know a fair bit about them because here is this stranger that I may be introducing into, you know, somebody precious to me into their life. So I ask questions about, tell me a little bit about yourself, you know, what are you currently doing, why are you moving on from what you're doing, what experience have you had in this sector, if any, how do you feel about people with disability, do you know anybody? So I'm just, you know, kind of exploring a little bit about who they are, and also what other stuff, what are their interests? So that's another thing that I'm very interested in because again I'm looking for that match. So if their interests kind of match my sister's interests or match my son's interests, then I'm going to have more in common and the relationship's probably going to work better. And then I ask them to tell me a little bit about, you know, their skill set, what have they done, what experience they've had, because then I'm seeking, you know, does this person have the skills that I'm looking for so that they can actually perform this job. And so, yeah, and the other thing too is I always take someone else with me to the interview. So I always tee someone else up to come because I just find that having another pair of ears is good. And also I get them to write down the answers, especially if you're interviewing 2 or 3 people. I always sort of do them all on the same day if humanly possible, leave about half an hour in between the interviews so that we can actually, you know, have a bit of a powwow and say, well, what did you think? And what did you think about that answer? And we just, it gives us more of an opportunity really to think well about the interview and not get overwhelmed by it, but have time to really take stock of who, you know, what is this person like? Do we really think that they're right?
Go on. We've actually started using Zoom for our interviews because, you know, being in Melbourne, we needed some extra team members last year, but there was that little bit of nervousness about meeting in community or having people come to the home. So we have used Zoom. The other thing that we did, obviously, so my daughter's 19, so she's an active participant in choosing who is in her team. So we actually did a little sheet up for her with the person's name, and so her key worker, Caitlin and her key worker interview the new team members. I usually do a quick vet over the top, but I'm really at that point where I'm trying to step back a little bit. So they did the interviews. But what we did for Caitlin was we did a little chart with the person's name, and then some just simple faces. So a face with just sort of like, it's the old, average, no, really good. So we had 4 faces. So that she was able to listen and talk to the person and then tick what she felt about that person. And we sort of felt that was a really important part of her developing. We're talking about us, as nominees and as family members developing that skill, but we wanted to develop that sense of her knowing that her opinion is an important part of this as well.
Oh my goodness, Peter, you read my mind. So often on Facebook Lives, I'm like, yes, that was the point that was coming to the front of my mind. We don't have the time to cover it today, but that's sort of moving into this discussion, which is so important around supported decision making, isn't it? And really that key is you can't do that from a distance. You have to bring the person, front and center of that process. But that's for another time. We'll go back to that.
And I think that question about how do you involve the person who has a disability, particularly if they have a significant cognitive disability, how do you involve them in the process? And that would be a whole half hour.
Absolutely.
It would.
Exactly.
It totally would. But I love that little snippet that you gave us, Peter, because it helps spark people's thinking, oh, actually, I could do that, or I could actually use that idea and modify and personalize it for my situation. Okay, so you've interviewed. Now, do you offer, if you're thinking yes, do you offer a position, or do you offer a trial shift, or do you offer a buddy shift? Like, how do you know? Do you just follow your gut, or do you always follow exactly the same timeline?
Okay, so I guess what we're doing also when we're interviewing is there are things that we take note of. Does the person turn up late? Are they on time? Have they brought the material with them that we ask them to, like their driver's license, their evidence of car insurance, that sort of stuff. So there are also other things that are happening kind of behind the scenes outside of the questions that I'm asking, which then help us make some decisions about, does this person kind of still fit the bill? But the other thing too is, while we're interviewing, we're also aware of what I sort of call, and I've heard termed red flag moments. So the things that people might say or do that instantly make me think, they may not be right. And so, for example, the person who ends up, arriving 45 minutes late, that's just a no-no for an interview. You just don't. But then once we start talking, and then, I say, so do you have any questions? And the first question that comes out of their mouth is, so does she have any behaviours? And I just think, well, really, is that the only thing you're interested in, or is that top of mind for you? And if she does, well, I will tell you about them, but it's probably, there are other things about my sister that, are probably going to be really relevant to this job as well. It just, people's questions can tell a lot about where they're coming from and, the experiences that they've had. It's also, the red flags also about, if somebody is doing a university degree, I always ask, what are you going to do at the end of that degree? Just because, I had the experience once where I'd said, we're looking for someone long term. Yep. And I said, so what are you going to do at the end of your degree? Oh, I'm traveling overseas. And I'm going to set up business in the States. It's like, right, well, you're obviously not going to be here for very long. Anyway, so then we absolutely narrow it down. And it's once I think that there's 1 or 2 people who are, potential, that then I then bring my sister into the picture, and she then gets to meet them, and she makes the final decision, because she's the person who's going to be spending the most time with these people. And I think bringing her into the picture so that she makes the decision. It's tricky though, because Margaret, my sister, she can very much just go with whoever the person is that she met last. And that's one of the tricky things about, getting it right, so that we have to remember that this is somebody with an intellectual disability, generally who wants to please and, and not say anything, not be mean, and, not say anything negative about anybody. So we have to be really clear about the sorts of things that I need her to pay attention to, and then give her the opportunity to say yay or nay.
Doesn't that come back to just knowing the person person, you know, you, as her family member, and understanding that, and can actually support her in her decision making because you know her so well. So that's really good. Peter, if we think about some of those red flags and things like that, perhaps the scenario I was going to put to you was perhaps there's a couple of little things that are not quite, but it's worth a try. It's worth a try. I was wondering, what are your thoughts about, would you do a buddy shift first? Would you do some sort of formalized training kind of concept to sort of then, would you move through that process a little bit?
I think you're absolutely right. Sometimes, you know, there can be those little misses, or, I mean, the persons, I mean, remember, like we said, we're looking for someone to connect intentionally, not necessarily based on the fact that they've been a disability worker for 20 years, but it's the fact that they, you know, bring that genuine connection from community into that person's life. So I think there's a couple of really good ways you can do it. Absolutely. If you've got like another person who is, you know, works with that individual regularly, or a key worker who can actually do the first couple of shifts with that person and set up the expectation and model how to support that person. I think that's the most important thing. How do we want our person to be supported? You know, we need to make sure their strengths are recognized so that we're not supporting, you know, we're not over supporting them. And we also need to know that genuinely that person has difficulty with this. So that is something that you do need to do. So it's modeling support through a buddy shift.
Okay.
It's also building trust. And one of the great examples, which is actually in one of the resources that we're sharing, an interview we did with a mum, her son was 13, he has autism, and they were introducing a support worker, was that they brought the support worker in and they actually had some family game afternoons. So the whole family was there playing games, and the support worker was there as well. And that was about introducing her as someone that was going to be a trusted member of their team. It gave her a chance to see the dynamic in the family and for them to model support, but also for that young person to check that person out from across the room and not immediately be thrown in a situation where the two of them are left alone and expected to work together. So there's a couple of different ways that you can think about doing it. I think that this goes back, though, you know, when you give that a go and maybe things still aren't quite right, it goes back to what Katherine was talking about, a good job description, clear communication in the interview, so that if something happens and you need to have that uncomfortable decision, that uncomfortable conversation that says, hey, listen, so-and-so, thank you so much, but on reflection, you're probably not going to be the right person. And can I tell you the relief that will be, because that person probably knows that they're not the best fit. You know, so I think that's the great thing what Katherine was saying about writing a job description. When you write a job description right at the front, what you're doing is setting up clear lines of communication. And once you open that line of communication, you allow that person to come back with you to you as well. So they give them time to ask questions about the job. Give them time to say, look, I wasn't comfortable. Can I ask about this? Or I'm not sure if I'd be comfortable providing that type of support. So really, as Katherine said, we're wanting to create genuine long-term relationships. You have to do that through really good, clear communication at the start.
And so it is also important at that stage to be clear about what the channels of communication are. And because for some people, they are supporting someone in isolation. You know, there's not going to be two workers there. There's not going to be the family there if you're supporting an adult, which is the circumstance that we have. My sister supported to live in her own home. That there has to be a really clear and obvious channels of communication so that to and fro actually can happen. But, you know, the thing is that no interview process is fail-proof. And so there will be times when, even though you've used your best judgment, you think that this person is, you know, has the potential, that there are going to be times when you just think 3 weeks or a month down the track, this just isn't working. And you do have to have that conversation. But most people are pretty reasonable about that because, as you say, Pieter, if it's really not working, they know it's not working as well. But, you know, and it is just going to be awkward, and it can be really difficult. you know, to actually give somebody their notice and say that I'm sorry, but this isn't working, and you know, we don't need to, we won't be requiring your services any longer. But you're better off doing that sooner rather than later. It depends really though. Is it a training issue? So again, it just comes down to what is the issue. And is it simply that the person needs a little bit more time because there's a bit of training that's missing? And people are, you know, people sometimes they just need that extra little something, which maybe wasn't identified at the beginning. So I guess it's also, I mean, and I've certainly learned over the years to not jump to conclusions when something's not right. Because sometimes you don't know what it is that's going wrong until you explore it. And I guess it's always bearing in mind that, you know, the people who we're engaging to do this kind of work, you know, they're good, honest, reasonable people. They deserve to be treated well and fairly, and that there's always two sides to every story. And so you give people the opportunity, you know, if you think something's going wrong, you know, have that conversation, give the person the opportunity to say, well, this is what I did, or this is what I wasn't sure about, or, you know, the benefit of the doubt can go a long way when it's offered in, you know, in the right sort of spirit of things.
I love that point, Katherine, because it's really what we're, particularly if we're looking for that long-term position or that role and that support worker, then we're asking for an investment, aren't we? And we're showing that we're asking for an investment by writing the job description, by following this process and making sure it's thorough at the beginning. Then in fact, we need to invest in them, don't we? Because it is a two-way thing. And so having that opportunity to map out some obviously essential training or essential induction, but then revisiting that maybe when something doesn't seem to be moving, you know, as it should, and then giving them maybe the opportunity to say, you know what, this is not quite right, but I'd love some more training. That might be a hard thing for some people in a support role to actually declare. I need more help. I need more training. But wouldn't it be nice to have that conversation and then realize that you're both still really committed, it's still on track, and we just need to find the next way forward, I guess.
Yeah, because trust works both ways. You know, it isn't just about us having to trust that person, but it's also for the people that we engage as paid supports. They need to trust us too, that, you know, we're reasonable people, that, you know, we understand the circumstances sometimes that they are facing, and that we're going to be, you know, reasonable and fair as their employer or as the person engaging them to provide these supports.
Well, thank you. First of all, thank you so much for your time and sharing your depth of experience around these things. I think you've given us a really nice snapshot of really the scope of starting, you know, sort of zooming out from that initial point where we might find ourselves in day-to-day life, or the problem that we might be facing, dilemma right now, but actually rewinding and taking that. It does take a bit of self-discipline. I always sort of have to bribe myself to sit down and do some of this brainstorming, to be honest. Very helpful, but I need to get yummy snacks and usually a hot coffee, and then I can sit down and really think about these things, such as writing a job description. So for our audience who are joining us, if you're sort of thinking, oh, that sounds like a lot of work, remember what Katherine has shared with us is these are the foundations, and this will make the whole process become so much easier, and it will pay off, won't it, as we go along.
I think, like we said, it's a start, you know, and just start with something small. That's the thing, you know. It's just, and you know, Katherine's advice is just amazing, I think, and applying that. But like we said, just applying it to one thing, and, you know, trialing that, testing that, you know, not being too hard on yourself. But it is a really, we know, I mean, and Katherine speaks with years and years of experience. We know the difference that great support can make in someone's life. We know that, and we know that to get that, you know, the truth is that we do have to put in a bit of extra work, but I think that if we can start as you know, as people that have that opportunity to make those decisions, if we start practicing, I say exercise that self-direction muscle. You know, it's always uncomfortable at the start, but you just got to do it. You know, you just got to get started somewhere.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and my gratitude to both of you as well in my journey of learning how to, I'm involved in this work. I'm still learning how
we all are still.
But I think it's just so incredibly, both of you are a little bit, ahead of me in this journey, but I just so deeply value being part of this family leadership community, because there is nowhere else where I can get this level of expertise and support. It truly belongs to family leadership. So I really appreciate you taking the time to join us here on the Plan Tracker platform, so that we can share this out to other families and communities around Australia. As always, if you have particular questions that relate to, perhaps your plan is plan managed with us and you have a particular question around supports and gaining maybe some capacity building, some more paid learning or training around building a support team, by all means you can come to us at Plan Tracker. I'll put all the relevant links and resources, as always, in the comments below. Perhaps you'd like to talk to Mable and talk about how you can perhaps start building a team by the use of their platform, or perhaps you're looking for other resources, then their door is always open to you as well. Again, Katherine, thank you so much for your time. Community, as we said, stay safe. Anything we can do, you can reach out to us on this platform or directly in our organisations, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.